Good day, everyone. Welcome back to our second episode of CaF Youth Virtual Forum. My name is Thanikan Skunratana, and I am an ASEAN Arts and Cultural Creation at CRCN. It is such a pleasure to be back. And for those of you who join us for the very first time, this CaF series will be broadcast on every Tuesdays for the next 2 weeks from 6 to 7 p.m. Bangkok, Hanoi or Jakarta times, depending on where you are, so please adjust your time. On this CRCN Facebook page. Each week's topic for our discussion will be different, but all of them will be under the main theme of from crisis to the next normal. And for each week we will have a different our young speakers from across ASEAN who are the leader of their fields. And at the end of each episode, we will post our summary of what we have discussed today. So you can look at those summary at worldwide.c-rcn.org, or as you can see from our screen below, that is our website that you can check out. And for this episode, we will discuss with our speakers, with 4 speakers, under the topic called Coronavirus and the Environment. So please remember to click share, click like, and send your emojis to share your feelings about how you feel about our session. And also, if you have any question, you can post your question on the comment section of this Facebook page, and we will pick your question and ask them to our speaker at the end of our sessions. So now with no further ado, here is our 4 speakers of the day. Each of you please introduce yourself to our wonderful audience one by one, starting with Kathleen, please.
For organizing this. This is very useful platform, and thank you for inviting me. I'm so happy to be part of these distinguished speakers. It's such also an honor and pleasure to be here to meet people from different countries. I want to start by saying that above all, I hope that all the participants at home today, as well as their loved ones, are safe and well. Let me introduce myself. My name is Kathleen Ariela Simatupang, and I'm from Indonesia. Currently, I'm doing PhD in science in Chulalongkorn University. And my research concerns about the environmental and water resources engineer. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. And our next speaker, Mark, could you introduce yourself, please? You please unmute.
Sorry. Hello, my name is Mark. I'm from Malaysia. I am currently the advisor for the Sarawak Eco Warriors. And what the Sarawak Eco Warriors is a platform where it's a volunteer-run platform where people come together to learn, to lead, and eventually start off their own green initiatives. Previously, I was working under the communications line for conservation efforts. So I work a lot with young people from schools, from universities, young adults, trying to reach further into conservation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Next, Marinelle, could you introduce yourself to our wonderful audience, please? She's gone. Sorry. So we will skip to Mr. Parkin. Could you kindly introduce yourself?
So, Sawadee krap. My name is Parkin, and I'm a PhD candidate from the Faculty of Environment, Kasetsat University. And I am also a researcher for the King Royally initiated Lampakbia Research and Development Project, which is under the Chai Patana Foundation. And again, my specialty is under climatology. However, as part of the Lampakbia project, I was also a researcher focusing on the King Royal initiatives on environment and the nature by nature processes about the environment. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. So let me check if Marinelle has come back. No. Yes, also we can skip our introduction. We can let Marinelle introduce herself later on. So now let's move to our first question. as you all know, COVID-19 has impact our life a lot, and a lot of things have changed, especially in terms of environment. That a lot of things have shifted toward to a more positive degree, but a lot of things have like decrease and deteriorate a lot. So the first question will be like, what is the short-term effect of COVID-19 towards the environment? Let's start with Catherine. What is your point of view of the effect of COVID-19?
Okay, thank you. So yeah, as we have known that COVID-19 is global pandemic and serious threat to human health, which halt the economy's activities as well. However, in my point of view, it's also considered as a blessing in disguise, where we have seen right now the air pollution is decreased, lower greenhouse gas emission, the ozone layer is healing, and also the reduction in water pollution. So a few days ago, I read the news in Italy. I believe maybe some of us have known about the news that the swan sighting in Italy after the lockdowns. The water looked clear because there is less traffic on the canals, and it's allowing the sediment to stay at the bottom. And also the air is less polluted since there are less boat traffic than usual. So right now, my one of the main impact of the coronavirus outbreak has been significant drop in air pollution in many parts of the world. Let me take an example from my country, in Indonesia. Until a few months ago, smoke and car fumes were the greatest concern to urban dwellers. According to Jakarta Environment Agency, 70% of pollution came from the land transportation, 9% of heaters and electric generators, 8% from industry, and 8% from domestic activities. So the air over Jakarta has become increasingly polluted since 2018, hitting a low in 2019 when the city was named the 5th most polluted capital in the world. Yeah, so basically what I would say is during the social restriction period, the air quality in Jakarta is improving a little bit only from now on. As the coronavirus quickly spread around the world, this virus forcing people to stay at home. People are not allowed to drive or fly, which leads to a massive reduction in air pollution. These lockdowns have resulted air quality improved largely because of a reduction in factory and road traffic emission of carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxide, releasing ozone formation, and also the particulate matter. This transportation activity has significantly been affected due to COVID-19 lockdowns, as there is less energy consumption and less oil demand. Right? Correct me if I'm wrong. And then the outcomes of the lockdown can be easily identified as an improvement of the environmental quality, such as the air, water, and noise. Actually, this pandemic could show us how the future might look with less air pollution, or it may just indicate the scale of challenge in the heart. At very least, it should challenge the government and businesses to consider how things can be done differently after this pandemic to hold on to temporary improvement in air quality. The current status of the air quality may be temporary, but there's a good opportunity actually for us as scientists, researchers, students, or also like individuals to learn as well as to understand from the apply of lockdown activities on how to minimize the concentration level of air pollutants on a long-term basis. In the midst of this pandemic, the earth is healing itself. The water is clearer. The air is fresh. The nature itself is getting better by day without human to pollute it. So basically, ourselves is giving us a signal that it can do better without us. It's time for us to realize that we are not the master of this planet. Rather, we are just a small part. We need to humble ourselves and from now on to start to contribute to our nature in every way we can. That is my idea actually.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very insightful talk. Let's move to Mark from Malaysia. So what is your point of view about the short-term effect of COVID-19 from your experience or from your point of view?
I agree. I agree with Kathleen. There are a lot of good points. We see that wildlife are taking over a lot of areas, but there are also a lot of negative areas. For instance, I'm sure many countries we were having a big problem with waste management before COVID, and during COVID, the intensity of demand for single-use plastics for PPE, all of it increased. So the question is, what's going to happen now? Where are all of these plastics going to go to? Are we going to open more landfills? Are we going to burn our trash? Are we in the capacity to recycle this new trash? The second item would be, again, with wildlife taking over areas, it's really, really great. But we are not looking into the biodiversity aspect of it. We see more wildlife, but but wildlife trafficking and poaching has doubled in some places. In some places, it even tripled. So what does this mean? When we lose, let's say, when we lose our hornbills, what happens to the forest ecosystem? What happens then? Other than that, we also see many conservation economies failing. If you look at ecotourism, maybe a business that runs on people coming to this area to look at migratory whales, migratory birds, how can it operate when people stop traveling? And when people stop traveling, it also it also affects the economics on, will there be job opportunities? A lot of people are out of work at this point of time. Um, People are being retrenched. Students, fresh graduates, they may not be able to find jobs. But these are all somewhat bad points. But I also have a good point to share, which is with decision making, with negotiation, with discussions, similar to what we have right now. We don't need to meet in person. Of a lot of discussions are being run online through channels like Zoom, through Google Hangouts. Sorry, Google Meet. There's no more Google Hangouts. So it opens up easier channels for us. Now discussion has become a lot easier. It's become a lot more accessible, a lot more holistic. More people are able to participate in it. So these are the few short-term effects that I am considering during the COVID effect. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your sharing. Let's move to Mr. Parkin. What is your idea or opinion about the short-term effect of COVID-19?
Yeah, so in my point of view, so looking at it from more of an environmental management point of view, I look at it of how pretty much in our daily lives, we do everything, right? From one thing to another. So basically what we actually do is we try to achieve livelihood. And the definition of livelihood for us as environmentalists is to pretty much to secure the means of the necessity of life. And so therefore, what basically the COVID-19 does to this system, so again, if we look at the system as a whole where everything and everyone is connected into one environment, COVID-19 is pretty much how we look at it as a threat or pretty much an inhibitor, right, to the system. And what does these threats and does these inhibitors basically do is they slow down or they alter, right, the entire ecosystem, which is, again, as environmentalists, we look at the ecosystem of being defined into 4 different dimensions. And the 4 dimensions that we normally classified ecosystem as being placed into is definitely falls into the category of resources ecosystem, social dimension, technology dimension, waste and pollutant dimension. And so what basically that the COVID-19 affects the most is the social, the technological, and the waste and pollutant. When we look at the direct impact or the short-term impacts on social, I think Mark touched a little bit on that, where we basically see the movement or the shift or the creation of social distancing, which is, again, the control of human activities. So we see a shift in that. So does that make what we do in our daily life become normal, right? So what we try to do is we try to set everything, right, from one movement into what we call a normal state of environment. And therefore, when we have to try to achieve that, we try to bring in technology, right, to fix that part of the environment. The waste and the pollutant part of that environment, we see that people are changing their ways of life, right? So we don't go to dinners, we don't go to lunch elsewhere. we tend to stay in and keep at home. And what does that do directly? So it changed the point source, right? The point sources of where the waste is being generated. So again, in this point of view, in the short-term impacts, we see a whole shift in the environmental or our ecosystem that basically affects our livelihood. But the question is not the short-term impacts, because we know again the pandemic's going to last. Again, it will last for quite a while, but again, it won't be here forever. But the point I'm trying to make at this part is how we're going to move on and how we're going to move forward as part of we look at everything of the environment all connected, and how we're going to pretty much adapt to that point of view. And so, yeah, this is pretty much how we look at it, and we see that there's quite a lot of changes going on, and therefore I believe that it is the view of environmentalists that we have to look at different dimensions together in order to figure out how COVID-19 is affecting one system as a whole.
Yes, thank you very much for such an interesting thought and information. So let's move to our next speaker, Ms. Marinelle from Philippines. Because she has internet connection problems earlier, so we will let her introduce herself a little bit. So Marinelle, could you kindly introduce yourself to our audience, please? Please, Marinelle, hello? Yes.
Hello? Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, please kindly introduce yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Marina Lobaldo. I am from the Philippines. I am an international climate justice activist, advocate, and I am one of the founders of Youth Leaders Environmental Action Federation. That is a local group in Tacloban. So I am a survivor of the Super Typhoon Haiyan. If you have heard of that, that is actually where my activism started, because I saw that what we are doing now is not sustainable, and we should do more sustainable things in order for vulnerable countries like the Philippines not to suffer more from devastating effects of climate change. So that's where I started with my advocacy, and now I am sharing my story in the international platform and representing the youth of the Philippines in World Leader Summit, so that they will know and they will be able to understand what it is like to live in a third world country, or in a country that is always been hit by climate disasters.
Yes, thank you very much. So let's move on to our first question. We see you on our first question. So what is your point of view or opinion about the short-term effect of COVID-19 towards our environment currently? Could you share a little bit about that? Hello?
Okay. Yeah?
Yes. Please.
So COVID-19 for me is an enlightenment for all of us, that the normal is not working for us, and we should have a sustainable normal, a better normal, so that we will not be able to have um, more more pandemics or more viruses, because what we were doing before was actually triggered what we are experiencing now. So this COVID-19 is actually an enlightenment that we should not live with the normal that we were used to have before. We have to have a better normal that is sustainable, that is considerate to our environment, and that is more environmentally friendly. So we will not just think ourselves, because everything is connected, and wherever you are, whoever you are, you can be affected. Like what is happening now with the COVID-19. Everyone in the world is affected. I mean, it has become a pandemic, and it has spread all over the world for just 1 month. And if we will not change change our ways, if we will not put climate action, if we will not put climate negotiation at the
Uh,
forefront, if we
um,
will not prioritize climate action, we will suffer more devastating effects, not just a pandemic, not just a natural disaster or a typhoon, but other climate disasters. So I think this COVID-19 is an enlightenment for all of us to have a better normal, not just to settle. Hello, I can't hear anything.
yes, I think could you like turn off your camera so maybe it will help the internet connection better. Hello, she's gone. Okay, so because sorry for about our technical problem, so we will move on to our second question, which is we will focus on the long-term effects of COVID-19 toward our environment. So may I start with Kathleen? So in post-COVID-19 crisis, in your opinion, how will we get a sustainable greener world, and what will be your suggestion or opinion about our future in terms of environment?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, honestly, this environmental issue has caused me like an anxiety in my life for several years. As much as I hate to say it, this pandemic has provided a huge break from all of that. So yeah, this pandemic killing humans is causing the earth to get better. That's kind of ironic, I would say. Just show how quickly this planet can fix itself if we just give it a chance to do it. Obviously, I would say this virus is devastating and has destroyed so many families, and my heart goes on that. Hopefully, once we are eradicated the virus, we can maybe concentrate on what we can do or even stop doing in order to fix the problem while we still have the advantage. As we emerge from the coronavirus crisis, I think it is vitally important that we find a way to treat the crisis as a catalyst for change. As we have now, I think for a certain amount of people after this lockdown, they will go back to their old ways. I mean, they don't care about what this coronavirus had taught us. Let's think like this: what would happen if we team up with nature and didn't pollute the environment? As we have seen here, like when humans stop doing their activities, we start seeing beautiful things happening, like animals returns and the pollution vanishes. As we have know also that people are more focused on public health and preventing the virus. We have totally forgotten about the environment, but we are part of nature. When the nature is disrupted, all the humans, all the living organisms will be affected as well. If we really want to solve the air pollution problem, then we can do it. From the government, I think they don't realize is that instead of spending like billions or trillions to research on how to fight pollution of global warming, all we need is just to cut down unnecessary activities and stay home occasionally. Give this nature some time to breathe and recover. It is scary, but it's also amazing for me that to see that nature is healing just after lockdowns in months of sheltering can have a drastic change in the recovery of the sky, lake, river, and the ocean. So yeah, I mean, like for those of us who can like work from home, I would say yes, why not? We have the technology we have discussed before. The less frequently we use our car, the less pollution we produce. Also, we will save money that will otherwise to go on fuels, maintenance, and the parking tickets, right? Yeah. So if there will be fewer cars on the road, there will be fewer emission of carbon dioxide from the traffic. So yeah, if we have to compare to our normal lives, we will have lower carbon dioxide emission while we are all working from home and basically not driving very often. Maybe this situation inspire us to develop better policies for working from home in the near future, which would mean less traffic, right? Or if people maybe if they want to go outside, they could use bike while doing or walking to the exercise as well. but it's need really serious action and really ambitious. So yeah, we only have one planet to live on. Let's protect it. Let's take care of it. If it's not us, then who else, right? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for such an interesting thought. Let's move on to Mark. What is your opinion about the long-term effect of the environment, or what should we do to keep it this way or make it better?
I have a point to share similar with Kathleen again. So my point would be mainly on network connectivity. So yeah, I do see it that in the future there's a very big opportunity for a lot of industries to open up um, the availability for people to work from home. And this, I see this as really, really good because that means that it will control the number of people living in cities. That means you have more people living in suburban areas, more people living in outskirts of the towns. So that's a good population control. But in reflection to that, we also can see it as a way to improve because there is a case that recently happened in Malaysia in Sabah where there was this girl. Um, she wanted to take an exam, but her house did not have internet. To get internet, she had to climb a tree and set up a tent there to take the exam. So I think this can be taken as an inspiration to increase network connectivity in every part. So we actually get to cover a more holistic demographic of people, allowing and giving people more opportunities. Other than that, I also see that the way that we move forward should be more holistic, should be more inclusive, because at this point of time, a lot of the decision making process in a lot of places, we are solely basing it on government initiative. So we are missing out a big minority. We should have more youth engagement within the decision making process, more woman engagement, and uh, more incorporation of indigenous communities. I think if we get more groups together to actually move forward, we would definitely be able to cover more areas and we will be more concise with what we do. And the last thing I want to share would be um, when in the decision making process, in whatever we do, we often see that COVID is good for the environment. It's good now, but if we look to the future, a lot of us are still in quarantine. Do we want to travel? Of course we do. Nobody likes being stuck at home for too long. Um, when it is safe to travel, everyone will be traveling. The carbon emission will increase. A lot of factories were on hold, but once they have the green light, production will go up again, and everything will revert back to the way it was, or so we hope it wouldn't. So now this is our opportunity to work together, to think, to strategize how we are going to make a better future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for such an insightful talk and interesting idea. So we will move to our next speaker. Mr. Parkin, could you kindly share your thought or opinion about what is the long-term effect or what should we do to make the work better and better?
Okay, so if you were to look at the long-term effects in the point of view of environment, so the word environment is pretty much, again, as I capped before, it's a very broad term. It's actually not just encompasses trees, animals, but it also is connected to the economy and connected to the social science aspect. It's connected to technology, connected to the different resources, right? Connected it to the different peoples we have interaction with each other. And then how we look at environment as environmentalists, we look at it. So we look at environmental system as one whole thing, right? And so what basically, as I said before, what the COVID-19 does is actually an inhibitor or threat to that particular environmental system. And again, like all other threats that is out there, right? For example, we hit with natural disasters, storms, right? Tsunamis. We hit with a lot of technology. We like other threats, for example, CUP, right? Government stopped. And we've seen that before a lot of times in Thailand. And basically what actually that does, or what COVID-19 actually does, it actually gave us a first-hand example of how the environmental system would change. And the first keyword I'd like to point out with that changes is pretty much the term self-recovery, right? We see self-recoveries in different terms and aspects of environment. We see self-recovery in what we do in our daily work. So we were forced, right? We were asked to pretty much start our social distancing, right? We were asked to stay home. And therefore that particular aspect was recovering so that we're able to pretty much produce the same amount of work at home, even though we change our environment. So again, we have to adapt to that, right? We see the example that Catherine mentioned, right, in Italy, where the COVID-19 situation was pretty much very bad, right? We see the changes, we see the self-recovery of that environment. We see the waterways, right? The wastewater treatment system becoming better, right? We see down in south of Thailand, right? Animals, for example, fish, which are very fast indicators of environmental conditions. They actually come back and they basically biodiversify the environment over there. We see the air pollution dropping down, right? The carbon dioxide levels, the NOx emission, the VOC emissions. We see the heat being generated from anthropogenic sources being reduced down. So therefore, basically, just like the other environment, we see the first term, self-recovery. And right, so basically what we actually do is each environment would have their own norms of self-recovery. And so that brings me to my second word, right, is the way we move forward. And the key word here that I would like to point out is we call that self-reliance, right? And so we ask ourselves, back to the old system, right? The way we're working, or the business as usual as we were expected to go back, can we go back? We've seen the first-hand improvement of what controlling of human activities can actually do to us, right? So what basically COVID-19 does to us is basically very simple. We didn't invent any new vaccine yet, or as if I heard of. What basically is the one that is reducing down, right? The numbers of people being affected is basically the social distancing aspects. And basically what the social distancing aspect does is, in terms of environmental management, it's the controlling of human activities, right? So basically when we control human activities, how does the environment react to that, right? Does it create a lot more self-recovery, or the rate of self-recovery becomes a lot better? And since we know that firsthand by just controlling this human activity, can we, right, as a whole together, as a unit, right, apply that concept of controlling of human activities and apply that? For example, the LET project, or the Lampapia project, is going to be reopened, right, in July. We're basically controlling the amount of people visiting, right? A lot of tourism places in Thailand, we see that again, we have to scan our way in. So therefore there's a limit. There is of course, in environment, we all know that terms, the maximum or the carrying capacity of one environment. So if we tip over that edge, again, we see environmental catastrophic, right? And so we don't want that to happen. And see, we're just controlling the amount of humans interaction with that particular environment. We're able to create that better environment. And again, by knowing that, we're able to create the terms of self-reliance. Again, going back to what we do as part of the King Royal Initiative, Chai Patana Foundation, we actually look at how we're able to make that transition from a more technology reliant more to ourselves. So we actually go back to ourselves. So for example, so pretty much how we are affected. Again, we see that the people in the urban environment is pretty much affected a lot, right? Because I believe that they rely on connectivity, they rely on more exports. But however, if we look at how the sustainable way of King Pumipon actually does is the sustainability or the sustainable economy, right? And basically with that aspect, are they really being affected by that coronavirus effect? And again, I don't want to see it as coronavirus, just like what Catherine just basically said. It's more of an opportunity for us to basically understand how the environment could be improved with just controlling the carrying capacity and understanding how environments can be self-sustained. And therefore, we can actually move forward from that aspect as well. Because again, I don't really believe, in my opinion, that the old ways of doing business as usual is actually the most sustainable way. But again, here we get that first-hand examples, and then we go back. We actually found that the environment got better with us humans sitting at home. So what is really the cause of environmental deterioration, right? So leave that as a note as well. And again, during this time of transition, we know that the economy is stopped, and people is going to be questioning us a lot about, okay, if an economy is also part of the environment, would that affect a lot? And again, I would say it would, right? But again, the term self-reliance would come back, right? At this time where we are pretty much social distancing ourselves from one another, we're using a lot less transportation, a lot less movement. Could we, as a whole, right, basically go and look at the new a new way and new initiative during this time? For example, try to reduce the amount of coal being burned, used for energy, and more focus on renewable energy in the future, right? When we were forced to stay at home, we were asked to stay at home. What diet were we eating? So we actually go back and look at ourselves. So again, part of that environment as well, part of the global greenhouse gas emission is actually coming from the diet our diet, right? For example, our food, right, is causing a lot of greenhouse gas emission, and by going back and look at trying to be self-reliant and how we're able to pretty much sustain ourselves throughout this pandemic would also give us that lesson to move forward, right, into the future and try to achieve that sustainability that we are looking for. And again, in my opinion, is actually, I'm going to share a slide that I make, and just to pretty much give a short summary of the view of how I believe that environmentalists, or pretty much everyone, could look at it. And okay, so it'll be this. So can everybody see? Right? So again, so going back, so what we actually trying to achieve on a daily basis is actually, so this is actually the normal system, right? The environmental functions of moving one step to the next, to the next, to the next. And what basically this whole system is trying to do is we're trying to achieve livelihoods. So it's basically the means of securing the necessary of life, whether it's that clothing, protection, food, and all that necessary means that we need in our daily activity. The COVID-19 pandemic is actually the one that interrupts this system. And so the question is, can we go back to being, is the normal way of going back before the COVID-19 situation sustainable? Or are we looking at the new opportunities that we're trying to find new ways of living, how we change our activities, right? So again, I believe that humans is pretty much the source of most of the environmental problems that exist in the world prior to the COVID-19. And how fast are we gonna be able to recover from that situation, and how, moving into the future, are we gonna be self-reliant? And again, working under the Chai Patana Foundation CaF, I see that the best way, and I believe that it still is through under the nature by nature processes, where we actually depend or go back to the nature itself to depend on its means to secure us the livelihood we need to survive. And again, the best way to move forward with the future. All right. So that's pretty much it. And yeah.
Yes, thank you very much for such an insightful talk. Yes, so now we move on to some questions from our home audience. We have many interesting questions. One question, if it was intended for Ms. Kathleen to answer this. So in your opinion, what are the practical actions that the government and us, the society, can take to ease our environment after what we have seen in the pandemic crisis?
Yes, thank you for that's a really good question actually. Yeah, about the government regulation right now, I think example like in Thailand, Thailand government actually it has done really good job in maintaining or the COVID-19 as we have seen the people who get infected of COVID-19 right really getting less and less every day. I think it's not because of the government, it's because of the people again. It doesn't matter if the government already make a strict regulation or strict restrictions, but the people, the individual itself doesn't care about it, then what is the point, right? But yeah, as I've mentioned about the government, maybe it will be a good idea if we could have like maybe lockdowns for let's say in every month, let's say for a week, and then we can start working at home. I think yeah, it will be a good idea. Maybe if
Yeah.
any other speakers have any other ideas.
Thank you very much. So for the next question will be for Parkin. I'm sorry, but the question that our home audience asked is quite long, so just bear with me. Uh, it would ask that how do you think is the best approach to achieve control anthropogenic activities in our society to cope with environmental pollution? Do you think that environmental education can play an important role to solve this problem?
Definitely. I definitely agreed with the question and part of the question itself. And again, part of moving forward is to understand about the environment. And of course, the best way to understand about the environment is through the process of environmental education. And whether it's through environmental education, whether it's we try to imitate the nature by nature technology, we try to adapt, or we actually try to pretty much replicate or initiate different technological means. I mean, in this way, we actually look at the way we understand of how the environment work, and again, taking into consideration that the sources of the impacts are actually from us. So again, having humans understanding the environment via environmental education would give us what we call the deeper consciences that we basically use. For example, the education of the trashing of plastic or single-use plastic, right? And so we see that in the COVID-19, people tend to pretty much care more about their well-being rather than of the environment. But again, we learned this once that it wasn't going to be the best way to move forward, right? So therefore, in order to pretty much cope with the future, and I say I didn't wish that the COVID-19 or other pandemic would come back, but again, it is inevitable, right? It's definitely going to be some sort of threat and disaster. It's part of the environment that there will be something that would disrupt that system. And therefore, next time we try to move and try to tackle that problem, we have this firsthand experience of what these types of disasters or these types of events could do to us. And therefore, environmental education, if we actually start now, right, could actually help us move forward and have us have us set up mitigation plans, right? Because we're not going to just sit here and just pray that it all is going to get better. But again, we have to work together, right? And I mean, not just one government, but more of a connectivity. So I believe that, again, the connection that CASEAN here is trying to prove us is, again, try to connect the different environmentalists, different ideas from around the ASEAN region, right, together. And therefore, we have to work together, right, in order to create this self-resilience in our system, in order to cope with the new one. And then definitely by the tools of environmental education would definitely be that key to move forward.
Yes, thank you very much for your answer and insightful opinion. So the next question will be for Mark. The question is about that the people's behavior will change as a result of the current pandemic in ways that can positively and negatively impact the environment. So what do you think if you move toward to more positive or more negatively?
I can only hope that it becomes more positive. But for that to happen, I believe that we need to be more innovative with the ways we handle problems. Because at this point of time, most of what we are striving for, it is always it is always um, it is always backed off because of personal belief, because of culture. And I know a lot of people are gonna hate me for this, but they a lot of reasons why we face these problems are because we cannot let go of these cultures. So I believe this is a good lesson for us, and it's a time for us to think about change. For example, we all know that fireworks are bad, but we still do it because of culture. The same thing applies with traditional medicine. Um, the same thing applies with eating wild meat. So yeah, this is our chance to change.
Yes, thank you very much for your very interesting and insightful opinion about environment and our human behavior. Uh, so for today's section is coming to an end. We get a lot of interesting idea and information from our three speakers. Supposedly should be four, but one is missing because of the problem with the internet connection. We are sorry about that. And for our next week section, we'll be focused on the rapid changes in the media consumption. So if you would like to come and you can check it out. It's quite interesting. So for today, thank you very much once again to our three speakers. Thank you very much. ขอบคุณมากค่ะ And I hope you guys will enjoy our this session and our next session. So don't forget to click like, click share, and use emoji to share your feelings about us and spread the word about CRCN and our forum. Thank you very much, everyone, and hope to see you again on next session. Thank you.